has dropped somehow, and that also leaves us very confused. What has changed? Is it the work? Is it the workplaces? Is it me? Is it my team? And these are the conversations that people have started having now. When in my conversation as a therapist, we have started talking about more in terms of, I don't want to be here because I don't think the culture supports me. I don't think my workplaces support me. Right? And we are hoping to really deep dive into these conversations today. So my name is Makkar Midha. I'm a psychologist, psychotherapist, and also the co-founder and partner of Mental Health at Work. Today, I'm hoping to really engage in a dialogue with all the eminent panelists present here from different industry verticals to explore light into what mental well-being means for them. What does mental well-being practices mean at workplaces? And does it really impact employees? Or do we just still be holding on a conversation that this is business, keep your personal life outside the door? Or are these conversations changing now? And I would like to invite Tanu, Vibhuti, Rina to really join with me in this conversation and talk about the practices that are being done in their industries, and more importantly, how do we make these conversations more sustainable and not just an after effect of pandemic. So I invite with me Vibhuti Lall, who is the India side HR leader at Advanced Auto Parts. She has a proven track record of HR leadership with 16 plus years of experience in talent and performance management, HR and rewards. She holds a master's in organizational psychology. Welcome, Vibhuti. We are also joined by Rina D'Souza, our senior associate head at People and Culture at Spur Education. Rina has worked closely with people in environment, education, and program implementation. She's a firm believer in promoting Limited. Tanu is an NLP master practitioner with 13 plus years of experience in improving organizational efficiency, ensuring people drive high value performances, and creating strategic impact. She's worked across multiple sectors and geographies. Welcome, Tanu.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, just quick thoughts. Now, while you are here, when we invited you for this panel discussion, what were some of your thoughts, and what made you say yes to be part of this discussion?
So I think I answered you almost promptly because I was on my mail and I saw your mail come in, and it's something I think we've all been through in the last years. You know, it's something very close to my heart, and I think there's a discussion, and it's always good to listen and take away some very valuable insights as well. So, and I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Right. Thank you, Tanu. And I remember your first response said that, this is very close to my heart. And of course, yes, I would like to be part of this conversation. Yes. Thank you, Tanu. Vibhuti, can't hear you. Perhaps you can start with Rina and Vibhuti, do you just log out and log in again if that helps? You can hear us.
Better now you hear me, the background. I'm background. Like Tanu, very close to my heart, have experienced it personally, have seen people suffer but not ask for help, and I think that calls for conversation for change. If we will not talk about it and practice it today and teach the generation of leaders who we deal with and who are coming, we lost it. I mean, humanity is facing the worst experience is what we are talking about, COVID. Forget about all of that. But today's world is not prepared to handle what the last 2 years and many years have done. So I think that is my contribution to the workplace and the leaders. That's how I think of it. So instant yes, and yeah, very close to heart too.
Right. And this also reminds me of the conversation that we had last week. We had conducted a session on the same topic as well. And one of the poll questions that we had was if you're experiencing any difficulties in your personal life, you find yourself languishing, struggling, or floundering, would you talk about this at your workplaces? About 95% said no. They will not talk about it, right? And the multiple reasons, yes. One of them was stigma, because they said no, there will be no level of support. This could also impact the perception at workplaces and even impact the further growth opportunities. And they rather not risk it. Rina.
Yeah, so I think something of this invite actually came at a very right time, and we were just in the process of finalizing the objectives for the year from people and culture teams. Like I told you, mental health and well-being is actually one of our focuses this year. So I think for me it was a very timely kind of request. And also, like Vibhuti said, there's a lot of personal implications. I have also been through stuff like that and been in environments that have not been supported. So I think the conversation is actually very, very important and, you know, I, in multiple ways. So I think a very timely one. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was quite an extreme actually.
Right. And I think that's what is about mental health, right? It is not a very distant concept or distant experience as well. It's a very new experience. Where all of us have experienced it ourselves on the spectrum. If you talk about mental health or mental wellness, it's not either it's healthy or unhealthy. Like it's not like binary. It's more on the spectrum right now. The days where you're feeling great, the days we're feeling very low, and the day we feel that we just find ourselves experiencing some of the loneliness where even though we have been around people, we don't feel understood, or just feel the term that really came up in pandemic was not that we're languishing, just being very blah, don't really have a heart and mind into this right now. And I think that's why I think it becomes all the more important to have these conversations, not in silos, not in hushed voices, not behind closed doors, but to really normalize these conversations because it's an experience all of us are experiencing right now. And for team members, for our colleagues to even know that there is space to talk about it and be vulnerable around it as well. Yeah. And I think what has been a turning point for all of us is the pandemic, right? Where there was so much spoken about mental health. And just want to check in with all of you that, do you have any specific observations with respect to mental health of employees during and post COVID? Do you think pandemic has changed anything at workplaces? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Rina, go ahead, everyone. Okay, go ahead, Rina.
Yeah, so I do think things have changed. I mean, I think something good was doing, I think, both ways. But yes, one of the things I think people have reported feeling is, feeling much more isolated because we've been working remotely for so past what, almost 2 years, going 2 years now. So that feeling of being siloed within your own team, that lack of connect to the wider team, especially if you're multi-location, which we are. So I think that has been one direct effect, and I think that therefore obviously affects the way you feel connected to your work, to your purpose. All of that gets affected. And therefore, so I think that's definitely one thing. I think the good thing that came out of it, if you ask me, and I think a lot of people will agree, is that we realize that this hybrid model actually works. So, and that kind of contributes to a much more stable mental health environment, work-wise, personally, because you're able to kind of focus on work, but at the same time, it's not at the cost of your personal life. You're able to kind of, and what it showed us, I mean, we're a largely implementing organization, so a lot of our team is in the field, and what it showed us is that we don't need to be in office 5 days a week to be able to be effective in the work. There are multiple models around, so I think that is the positive silver lining that has come out of it. But in terms of I think motivation levels in general, I think it dipped in the first year, and I think by the second year, people started feeling a little more, kind of used to working in a certain way. Of course, personal losses were there. A lot of people have, I think, pretty much half, more than half of them have gone through COVID at some point of time or the other. But despite all that, I think it's been a learning experience. I think overall.
Yeah.
As for me, I think Samriti, positive changes first, right? The good things first. I think people learn to reflect on what is important in life. So while we said work and personal life got amalgamated, lines are blurred, all the bad things happen. But the point is, you realize it is just a job. End of the day, you want to spend time with family, the time you get with your parent or a kid, your newborn or your teenager or somebody who's at the cusp of becoming an adult, you have the time to spend with them. So I think that is one spectrum of positivity that I saw. Second, people learned to prioritize what mattered in the sense of delivery, right? Sometimes people say, I cannot work after 6. So the compulsion that the workplaces brought kind of broke in many ways. So we are a GCC, right? We have flexibility of all sorts and delivery. So my people learn to say no and learn to say yes. Both sides happened. the things that worried me the most, I think, was to Rina's point, a lot happened when somebody suffered with COVID, lost a loved one to COVID, and did not have the courage or the faith to ask for help. Right? I have someone of that sort who I met day before yesterday. And classic example, this guy's father is still recovering on different level of complexity of health, but he says, you know what, I could come and ask you for help, Vibhuti, my leaders and you, and as an organization, I appreciate you being there. Being there is just responding to an email, responding to the chat, prioritizing that person's need. I think those were also angles that came from a negative experience, and they give you a learning, which is a different conversation in itself. So mental health piece, I think, took a hit also, and it kind of emerged also as one of the themes for people to choose employers carefully to stay or not. I mean, not to stay. I mean, that at level of organization, kind of, I found as a reflection point.
Yeah. Tanu?
Yeah, so I think mental health has always been there under the skin, so to speak. And I think the pandemic just pushed it to the fore, right? And that's when we kind of realized, I think for us especially, I'm reminded of this song which goes, "It's okay to not be okay," right? This lady on America's Got Talent, she sang it, and it was a lovely one. And I think that's been the key understanding during pandemic, that it's okay to come out and talk about, and that is one thing which has changed. As an organization, also we wanted to bring these conversations out. And it can only begin from the top, right? So when leadership is more open.
Then we've lost you. And we can't hear you. Or is it my network? We can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So where did I drop off? Where did you?
So the leadership and insight on the leadership.
Yeah. So when I think everybody feels aware, more empathetic, I think that is one thing which has changed for sure, right? Things which were not earlier talked about now get talked about. The concern is there, the empathy, the compassion, that has come through quite a bit, and that has really changed. And of course, as Rina said, the understanding that a hybrid model does work. So it's that's the other thing which has really come about, and that's the real positive there.
Yeah, yeah. Right. And I think fairly, I think similar experience that even I have had as I see clients in therapy or even consult with organizations as well. I think one conversation has also been around just like Rina was saying around the working models as well. That how hybrid model has really come about, where it's okay to have flexi working, right? Pre-pandemic, flexi working is usually associated with women. That once they are back from the maternity leave and they would like some flexi working, and just how there were also some conversations around flexi working and the trust issues around are people really working there or not, right? And what hybrid model has made possible is to really open up that avenue for everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of life circumstances as well, which is going to welcome change, because you've seen that how men as well would like the flexi working to be able to spend more time with the child, to be available for their parents who are ailing. We've also seen people saying that it's better to have hybrid working because then we can also work, let's say, for example, if you work in Mumbai, we can go back to their families in Pune, or vice versa as well, right? And have more quality time as well. Be able to focus on their personal interests and passions when they're not traveling on work as well, which is also promoting more work-life balance, to be able to spend time in things that really they value.
वो गूगल पे ही है मैंने लिंक भेजा है बट आपको
Which also I think what Vibhuti was also talking about, right? That in terms of being able to really ask the existential question, what is important for me at the end of the day? Is it only have to be about work? People really to think about it, no, why am I really in this? Why am I really doing this? What am I going to achieve by the end of it? And those are the questions that people started asking. This is what pandemic can make possible. When unfortunately people lost very close ones and loved ones as well, and couldn't even be there with them in their last moments for the final rites. And I think that really shook everyone, either when experiencing it themselves directly or indirectly. And I think this concept to know that people start seeing employees as people who also lead multiple roles as well. I think it has really transformed the landscape of leadership now. Where I think what we're looking for leaders is more of kindness, more compassion, more empathy. It's just not about business that we're talking about, right? That whether you can get the work done or not, whether you can mobilize the teams or not, but how much are you able to really be there for your team and extend that support for them as well? Because at the end of the day, now people are being coming to the organization not because they have to get the work done, because they feel whether they're valued and supported at workplace or not. Right? And these are the conversations how it's really evolved post pandemic is what I hear all of you saying. And as you bring this conversation, let's focus, Tanu was saying that mental health has always been there in this case. What the pandemic has done is brought the conversation to the fore. And now I want to check in with all of you that, in your industries, in your organizations also, how do you think mental health of employees is impacting the workplace culture, the performance, and the interpersonal relationships at work?
And I'll just take the liberty of going first this time. I have two types of things happening. One, the type who will not come and talk and would want to leave, and when my team would go and have a conversation, we would learn there's a fundamental problem, whether it's dynamic with the manager or the team or something at home is wrong, right? We make very conscious choices there, not to force the solution or the problem both on anybody concerned. That's a very conscious effort we make. Let people make the choices. I think that empowerment has worked very well for us. That we understand something is wrong, but do you want help? Do you need help? Do you want to take the help? These three questions are answered by the concerned party and the team member or the manager or the leader. The second is there are people who take help. I have three classic examples: two women and one man doing phenomenally well today. Last year they struggled. I wish I could put up a case management system to raise tickets to give help, but there's only so much we can do, right? They have conversations with me, with EAB. We have EAB partners, which is global in nature. Had a follow up outside of work because it was needed, and they believed in the process, and they're doing okay. Wasn't the prettiest journey, but they feel supported mentally, emotionally, and that well-being has translated into they becoming the promoter. Despite the fact the talent war is real, some of these people become the brand ambassador of sorts because they create that sense of emotional attachment with work that they become promoters with facts. They're not talking in the air. I think all that worked really well for us.
Thank you for sharing this. Tanu, I could request you to now come in.
Yeah, so for us as an airline, see at least half, maybe I think two-thirds of the organization is a customer-based approach, right? And it's so critical that mental health is in a happier place because it translates into how we are with our customers and how we are with each other. So it really does impact performance. It really does impact really for sure. And I think we've been very careful about it, and we've been very mindful about it as an organization to bring in as many measures as we can to help people, right? So we're required to be able to connect them with counselors and psychologists for certain scenarios. We also, there's a lot of things about mental health. Sometimes people look okay, they feel okay, but somewhere or the other it's going to burst forth, and it comes forth in your relationships with each other. It translates into some very abusive leadership, for instance, which can impact your team members as such. So in fact, we also have a team which handles the employee relations and reaches out and, as you say, they start to try and find ways to improve. And of course, there's always leadership training, there's a lot of counseling which happens. So all of that is some measures that we continue to take. Other than that, what we really wanted to focus on is a lot of increased communication. I think when we are in crisis, nothing works like working.
We lost Tanu. Perhaps we'll wait for her to come back. Rina, do you want to just go in and share your response and then we can have Tanu back?
Yeah, but you want to wait for a minute?
A lot of engagement.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you? My
Yeah, you dropped off. The last thing we heard was about focusing on increased communication and talking about doing crisis and over communication, and that's the last thing.
Yeah, and I really believe this, and this is something which I say right through. There's nothing like over communication during the time of any kind of crisis, right? So whether it is from your leadership or from your team itself, it's have your daily check-ins, having your weekly fun meetings, so whatever you do, it's so critical to be doing.
Right, right. Yes, I think some very practical tips out there.
Yeah.
Right, Rina.
Something. So I think I think to answer this, I have to give a little bit of context of what is it that STIR does actually. In STIR education, our focus is actually on behavior change and reigniting intrinsic motivation in teachers and government officials and therefore education systems. So our focus is externally is intrinsic motivation, and we have that same focus internally as well. I mean, obviously we have to role model that if we are practice what we preach. So I think which is why I think compared to like yes, after the pandemic, I think the highlight has become much more focused on mental health. But I think the focus in STIR has always been on the premise that environments actually matter, for a person's experience of the workplace. So we believe that that's the premise of our work extending with teachers, and therefore we apply that same premise to our work. So if working conditions are not supportive, if they're disempowering, if there are no strong relationships, uh, we believe that that leads to demotivation and that leads to kind of obviously we are not related directly to mental health, but obviously we can make those connects there. So that is something that that's the way we are set up internally as well actually. And I will say having worked for nearly 20 years in the health sector, we are an exception, we're not the norm. And I know even during the pandemic, I know when I tried to speak of the larger social sector, it's been fairly supportive, but not not the way at least there was, and I feel like not as much as they could have done. Like someone was recently telling me how their field staff was able to feed throughout the peak of the pandemic, the second wave, first wave, all of that. So there is we are quite I think our work is actually focusing on how do we build an intrinsic motivator on the inside, intrinsically motivated team. How is it that what will keep people actually motivated in the workplace? How do we build strong relationships, strong positive, a work culture that is actually enabling people to actually come out and be open. So we make sure that our values actually guide us. And all that we do actually we try to match to the way our values are shape us. So like there is we are making sure that we are very open. It's a very open culture. We make sure that there's a lot of feedback that goes back and forth, both ways, feeding upwards as well as feeding back to your teams. So there's a lot of focus on actually building a very strong culture that is intrinsically motivated. And I mean, I think what actually makes up intrinsic motivation or what kind of the three kind of pillars that actually make a person intrinsically motivated are a sense of autonomy, a sense of mastery, and a sense of purpose. So we are actually, while focusing externally, and our program actually focuses on that externally, obviously that is the program that we deliver. Internally as well, we're trying to ensure that we are providing this kind of support to the community. So I think in that context, mental health in the organization has been a relatively easier topic to kind of broach and speak about. It's not that we've spoken a lot about it, but we have actually kind of tried to make it a priority for us. I think there is an open communication. There's a lot of focus on line manager relationships. So to kind of build, so there isn't that one person who comes to work and actually tell them, look, I'm not feeling good today, I'm not feeling today. So there's a lot of focus on that. So I think that's been the case for us for the last many years. I'm not saying it's a perfect model. I'm not saying it works, but of course. I mean, we are a bunch of humans coming from diverse backgrounds. Obviously, it's not perfect. The intent is good, and that's what we've been working on. And I think it's gotten more focused after we also realized that there is a need to kind of specifically look at mental health itself and that affects people's relationships in the organization, and therefore productivity, therefore motivation, and all of that. So I think that's something that's been quite like a driving force, I think, in the organization. As much as we can, we're trying our best to make sure that it is a priority. Like I said, people and culture are one of our objectives for this year is really in touch to kind of provide support to teams, provide training to teams, managers to be able to identify if there are issues, ensuring our policies are reviewed so that we are creating a culture that is our policies are also enabling the culture that we want to create. So we've always had flexible, not flexible, not in the way it is now, but we've never been like clocking at 9, clock out at 5, nothing like that. Working hours have always been flexible. We've always encouraged people to take leave. In fact, that's one of the things we do periodically. Like go back to line and say, why isn't your team taking off? Why aren't you taking off? What's stopping it? So, but I think where we have to go is also normalizing conversations around mental illnesses. And when I say mental illness, I mean also like depression, PDD, or whatever, bipolar, whatever. Just removing the stigma from it so that we can actually come to work and say, it is okay. So I think that's something that we want to. That's not. I mean, that's how we want to go to at least one part for now.
I think I hear all of you talking about these multiple initiatives the organizations have taken, uh, you know, to focus on mental health as well, and role of capacity building is in that regard as well. And I would want to focus on those medical initiatives because I think that could be very helpful for the participants and the listeners here. But I want to actually take a step back and ask another question that, what motivated the organization to take mental health into focus? What was that conversation like? And did this happen during pandemic or was it always there?
I think for us it was always there when we were thankfully like for Rina the timing of launching the program and then having the talk kind of made sense. It was natural. For us it was very natural to bring India on board with a partner who will help and define a program that helps. Um, I have come from background of employers where the programs were successful. I personally went through something and did not have the right solution. I think it was driven by the right at the leadership level, the intent with which you set up practice was also right. So for us, it was twofold. Third, interestingly, our demographics are very unique. To Tanu's point, their experience is very different. The burnout is real. For me, I have 20 somethings. My average age is 29, right? 50%, 60% men. Um, 40, 33% diversity, right? Imagine the 29 something dealing with the life milestones, COVID, ailing parents, the hit, and whatnot, right? So we expanded the scope of what we were doing globally and personally. So that's how the program became for the people, by the people, for us at Advance.
So one of our values is people first, and as a culture, very vibrant culture, like similar to Vibhuti, our average age is about 33, and we are an organization which is always on the go, right? So we celebrate, really hard. We party very hard. We work very hard. We party even harder. We are really known for that. And so, but what really happened during the pandemic was that I think the realization came in that there are a lot of stories behind, right, which is happening. And I think here's where the empathy and the compassion really came for, right? So, and we made conscious efforts to keep the partying up also. Like I said, every fortnightly we would have these bring your own beer kind of parties on Zoom itself, where you have those activities. Anything just to stay connected and, at least get away from work and talk about so while it was always there, I think it just got more humane during the pandemic for sure. I think there were small things which started coming out. We had these clusters formed wherein there were cluster leaders interacting with a certain set of people, so that everybody felt that communication was on continue. And I think one of the best things which I saw happen was that if somebody had COVID, right from the leader, the team, up to the CEO would call up to check how you all doing. And we make facilities available. We flew oxygen cylinders across. And, we did stuff like that. So I think we really lived up to those values per se, but the human touch became even more intense during the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay.
I think fun got more, more personal.
Mm.
Got more personal during this time.
So I think what I'm hearing that it was always there, but I think what panelists really did is to talk about just bringing more into focus right now and really spotlight the conversations around mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, like I said, our whole organization has been set up on the premise of ensuring that we are, education systems are just intrinsically motivated, and so therefore that applies to us as well. But yes, the pandemic definitely actually brought it to, highlighted it like strongly for us as well. Because I mean, there was so much, I think, personal loss that was actually we were going through, even if it was health. I mean, it's not necessarily that losing a loved one. There was a lot of general depression and trauma that was, on one side, like the people being isolated. Everyone went back to their hometown, which I directly video association. So everyone's working, and videos were out because many people didn't have proper, internet connection. So that there was a very loss of connection in some way, and people were tend to be connected only within their departments, within their communities. So I think that kind of highlighted it, and that's something. So one of the things we do is twice a year is actually a pulse survey, kind of, understanding what it's anonymous. And in that, we started checking on people, saying, because if they are, in case they were hesitant to kind of bring everything directly to their managers or to team or anything, we started checking in on them even then to ask, what is it that's, how is COVID in survey.
Yeah,
That's a question, but
right.
how, what is it that you need? Like, how can we support? What can the organization do? And so, I think that's, yeah, really, I think the pandemic really has been a great shifter in many ways, for us as well.
And so what I'm really hearing from all three of you, I think it's very, there's a common thread running, right? That mental health has always been realized that it's important. What pandemic there is to really spotlight it. And I think what also standing out in today's conversation is the fact that it stood out and came into spotlight because of future values of the organization. We can say it was at the right place. Now we are hearing also that the value was people first. That people are the human capital, right? They are the assets for us as well, right? And it's very important to focus on those. And if you do not have that intention and those values, then inviting these measures can be very difficult and challenging. Like Rina was also talking about that, there were some people who were still in the field during the peak of the pandemic as well. Nothing to take away from the fact that it's not important for those organizations, but really comes down to what is it that you're really bringing importance to in situations of crisis at that point in time. Where are you really valued? Where are you really anchoring it? And what's the intention of the employers and the leadership teams? And what I'm hearing from all of you is just the different measures that these different organizations have taken, which you're representing today, to be able to support the team members and our colleagues as well by really going ahead and asking the question that, how can we support you? What help you, even giving them still a choice, which becomes very important because the choice is what empowers us. Telling, okay, this is what we will do, it's not very empowering, it's very disempowering at that point in time. To really know that these support systems exist and they're there to support you, and the various support systems that I'm hearing from everyone here. I think one of being access to counselors and to AV providers. So for people who do not know, AV is Employee Assistance Program, where organizations will tie up with EP providers such that their employees, and in some cases even the family members, can avail therapy and counseling services free of cost. Right? And that's what EP providers do. So making the support accessible, because a lot of times people don't know who to reach out to. Unlike doctors, you can say, okay, this is an ophthalmologist, GP, we don't see psychologists really are really looking for, and how do we get that access possible for the team members. Also having constant check-ins, either through employee relations team or line managers, and doing a lot of capacity building work with them as well in terms of how do we really approach these conversations, because that can be hard, right? Because as people are reaching out to be available for other people, they're also going through their sense of loss. Either in terms of sense of loss of people, relationships, opportunities, and the pandemic we saw so much of that, and the loss was really vital in terms of the opportunities that we were getting, the loss of relationships, the loss of identity, a sense of self, and losses at multiple levels that people experience, and yet be available, emotionally available for other people. And that requires a lot of support in itself. Like Tanu said, over communication, especially while people are working remotely in silos, the videos are off, we don't know what people are experiencing. You still make that mindful effort to check in. Hey, how are you doing? This call is not about work, but for you, because you matter, because you are valued, you're cared for, and doing those daily check-ins. We were also hearing in terms of just creating a lot of supportive environment for them as well, through teams, through flexi working, flexible approaches, giving them a time off, or sending them oxygen cylinders, making the hospital beds available, just looking at what is the need of the hour at that point in time. And this will only become possible to be able to sustain this if there is a feedback system, like Rina was saying, and just not top down, but also have it the other way around, where there is open channel communication, have the feedback upwards. Um, and I think what really stands out, Rina, is that, encouraging people to take leave, to take time off, right? That's not because you're physically sick, but perhaps you're just not mentally present right now. Because there's so much going on right now, I'm not able to focus. I am very preoccupied right now. I can't get myself to motivate or work on this email or this project because uh, I'm not slept for 3 days. I'm not even able to see my family in pandemic while they are away in another city, and I don't know if they're okay or not. Right? And there was so much of stress experiencing. They were doing that, normalizing conversation that it's okay to be not okay. Like Tanu reminded us of the song, and also said that removing the stigma and destigmatizing conversations around even mental illnesses. That one is experiencing depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, personality disorders, to be able to talk about it, just like how we would talk about maybe hypertension and diabetes. That is an experience. It's not something which is not really putting the blame into the person and bringing a sense of shame and guilt and question that why am I like this? Why me? But really look at the fact that yes, this is what my experience is. What can I do about it? What support I can reach out to? Uh, and I think what also really helps to what Rina said that just taking these measures is not adequate. We need to go back and take that pulse away. Is it working? Not working? How do you bring that flexibility as a value in these initiatives and the measures that we're taking as well? To be able to constantly evolve these systems and these processes, because we're on a learning curve for organizations as well, where there has been a shift in focus. A paradigm shift is what we're seeing here. Yeah. Uh, and that's my next question to all of you now that, we're talking about these lovely initiatives to support mental health of all the employees. How do you make this sustainable? Because there are some other organizations as well, not that perhaps they don't realize that they're on a different journey or in a different path, a different phase of the learning curve. But to make it sustainable along with business demands, business requirements, because now, Tanu, like AirAsia, they are in a customer service, right? I mean, today the flight has to take off. The guests would need to be at the check-in counter as well. The ground staff would need to be available. How do we make the support available for all the teams where these are high pressure, demanding jobs, where there are other people also dependent on them as well for the cycle to keep moving? How does that balance look like between business and mental well-being of employees? Then maybe I'll ask you to come in first and settle that after.
Sure, sure. So see, I think two things work, right? One is your awareness. Second is the intent. Okay. So the awareness is coming for sure. The pandemic has hit us and it has taught us that. So maybe if you could request Rohit to go on mute, please, when there's some jingling which is coming up.
I'll put him on mute.
Thanks, Rohit. Yeah. So the awareness is coming for sure.
I think we lost you as well. Can't hear you, sorry. Try doing whatever you did last time.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry.
We lost you again. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, sure.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, as I was saying, one thing is the awareness part of it, which is there. The second is the intent with what we need to do with the learning which is coming from the back, right? And if the intent is there, then we will definitely take practices around it. We know for sure that we do need this kind of connect. We know for sure that we need to be reaching out more often. We need to be creating these kind of safe places. We have something which is called a peer-to-peer counseling, where people can step in anonymously and have a conversation with somebody who's just listening to them. Sometimes we just need that as well. So we need to set up these kind of processes very consciously and make it available to everyone. So it's all about the intent over here. So if you have processes which are working, how do we keep them going, and how do we make it accessible to just about everyone who does certain things? So the awareness part, the intent on how do we want to take it forward, will build it in. So once the intent is there, you will see the result. If the intent is not there, then nothing's going to happen at all.
For me, I'll just piggyback on what Tanu said about the intent, right? So allyship for us is one of the things which is driven from our culture and the values of inclusion. We have talent networks, global talent networks. Imagine nobody has met each other. They support each other on forums that we wouldn't even think will bring people together. Um, so the comfort of talking to someone who understands you is allyship, right? And to Tanu's point, it's a very evolved concept and reality in some places. In some places, it works based on a person to person or role holder, right? So at work, sometimes people can come to me, but they can't go to my team because my team is empowered to say no and they bulldozer people sometimes. So the impression of personalities also is very different. Some managers attract people to talk to them. So I think that that conscious effort to make those heroes within the organization is very important. This goes back to the fire drill training we went through in my HSBC stint, and I'm making a reference with a very odd thing. Like you had those phones at desk called fire marshal. Why can't you have well-being marshals, the unsaid, non-phony people who are there for you? We have some of those. We're trying to make more of those. So at times, what happens? The coffee conversations or water cooler conversations are very awkward when you bump into people. The comfort of picking that uncomfortable conversation is what it takes, in my opinion and experience both. We're trying to do that. In a very unorganized way, but bringing the cultural element now that strengthens the conversation, the culture of courage, we call it. And it's working. To Tanu's point, it all boils down to the intent and the culture that you bring in, and it's constant. It's like brushing your teeth. You can't just do it and then be okay. Meaning, एक बार कर लिया चलेगा. It doesn't work like that. So yeah.
I think I just wanted to set culture of courage, Vibhuti, and I want to spend 2 more minutes on this culture of courage and tell me more about this culture of courage.
So we have 6 cultural beliefs, right? Everything is on the internet. Everybody knows about that. So we have 8 talent networks. There's one network for LGBTQ. There is one network for Latino, one network for women, one network for Asian Americans, because we're an American corporation. Now, the culture of courage is I will stand up and say, I am not okay to do this job. I am not okay to do this. I want to do this instead of that, right? So these are references we make about this cultural shift that we are consciously putting effort to say this is not okay. And also, right? I mean, I'm attending conference for 2 days, and the conversation in one of the mega session was, what leaders want, what people want from their leaders. It's also that question that I need 1, 2, 3 things from you, and I am not okay with you doing this, right? So the purpose of very inclusive workplace drives this conversation of culture of courage for us. And we are a 90-year-old organization We have people who spend 30 years, 50 years, and also 1.5 years somebody based in India. And everybody is equipped to ask that question and get help. So, yeah.
Right. I think this is really talking about inclusive in a truest sense, right? Inclusive of all voices. That what do I need from my leader as well? That I'm not okay doing this regardless of which gender I identify with, which sexual orientation I come from, what is my cultural roots, or what's my ethnicity as well. But the fact is, as an individual, how do I get my? Do I have space to voice my opinion, voice my experience as well, and really creating a sort of psychologically safe organization that we've been talking about right now. Do I feel safe enough to verbalize what I'm really experiencing without having any filters on, without having to wear a mask, or just to try and see how it's with no fear of I don't know how it's going to be perceived, or there could be repercussions as well. And only then we can really create a space where we are really focusing on the individual, their experiences, and as a result on their mental well-being.
An ecosystem that Rina mentioned, right? Ecosystem is not limited to a workplace or home. What you give at work is carried forward at home. The reality is that we are all realizing it because it's in the forefront. So if I am creating a good experience for somebody who comes at work, or even if somebody is sitting remotely, if I have given my mind share for a 20-minute conversation, somebody left happily with a solution, or with a sense of direction, or the purpose, or the sense of belonging, you take any driver for that person that works, I think you've done a good job in creating an ecosystem where this person feels comfortable. Next time when you meet this person, either they will come with you that you told me to try this, I tried, it didn't work, or they will tell you I tried what you said and it is working for me. That potentially will give you another promoter, the psychological safety that we talk about at work, that then leads to a mental health practice which is in your DNA, literally in practice, not on books, not on programs, literally in action. I think that is a measure for me, right? It's not about the number of people who approach me, it's the number of people who say, I am okay to take help and I want to ask you for help.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's also a culture of courage, right? To be able to say I'm not okay, because often those voices have been marginalized and say that if you're saying you're not okay, then that's a sign of weakness. But what we really think is really challenging that thought and that idea that has been there historically for so many years of fact that it's not a sign of weakness. And saying I'm not okay is actually a sign of courage that you're talking about. And I think what also really stands out to me in this conversation, which is what you said that what you're experiencing at work is going to get carried back at home, and what you're experiencing at home is going to carry back at work as well. And I think that's also a paradigm shift. If you because 15 years ago, when I used to have these conversations in leadership, and they would say with a lot of pride, I tell my team that when you're walking into this workplace, leave your personal problems at the door. But I don't hear that anymore right now, and I think that's a shift, and I think that's the intent that we're really talking about here as well. That that the intention that your value for the person that you are and the experience that you're having as well, and we would like to honor that. And I think that's the intention I'm hearing from all three of you. And I think third thing, I think which you also spoke of, which really stands out to me, and I think you said even earlier as well, that today when I'm able to say, I'm not okay, and I get that support, and that person becomes a promoter. And that's the chain reaction. That's how the culture is really building of support right now. Because I know I have received that support, I would like to offer the same support to someone else as well. But if one person doesn't get the support, I'm less likely, not that I'm not, but I'm less likely to offer the same support, same extent of empathy and compassion to the other person, because that's not been my experience. And I think so. So we're really talking about change or keeping spotlight mental well-being. I think all that it takes is to focus on one person, and I think that will do the trick. Yeah.
So and that's what it is. Sometimes I mean, I will not lie. All I need is attention at that moment. Listen to me, give me your mind share.
Yeah.
Don't disrespect me by being on your phone or reading your email and things like that. I mean, if I want that, I have to give that. And then it also goes to the wonderful point that you made about if I'm able to behave in that fashion, if I bring my vulnerability, my pain, my failure, my lack of knowledge on the forefront, I am creating the culture where people will come and talk about it and ask for help. And I do that. I have practiced that, God knows for how many years. 8, 9 years now, since the first time I started realizing I needed help years ago. So I think that walk the talk we use as a phrase, right? I think it's real about mental well-being as well. If you're not okay, you're not okay. If somebody asks me, Vibhuti, how are you today? And if my day is bad, hand on heart, they check online. I will not lie. I will say it's a bad day. I don't feel well. And that conversation becomes very real. I think that courage also comes from the kind of person I am and the kind of organizational culture we are building. We are a people first organization, like Tanu mentioned about AirAsia, the culture, the vividness of the people and the experiences is the same for us. We are in the business of people. We sell auto parts to customers who come on our stores. If we are not real, we will not see that experience getting translated into the experience for a customer. So it is all very real. I think in the siloed world, thanks to COVID, it is all the more needed so that people see the true you. The pleasantries are real, the exchanges are real. If I ask you how are you today, it has to be real. It cannot be fake because, oh, my HR gave me a script to ask you how are you today, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think one thing I'm really also taking away from this conversation right now, that to be able to invite that vulnerability into organization, for people to be so real and authentic and vulnerable. As people, leaders have to start from us. That what, I'm not okay. I'm feeling vulnerable today, and to be able to really have those conversations, and again have the courage to do so as well, to be able to again build that culture. Yeah. Yes. Rina, your thoughts?
I think a lot on this side and a lot on similar lines to the way we are also thinking. But I think just like taking from what Tanu said, I think intent, I think to make anything sustainable at the end of the day, the intent has to be there to actually, make it happen. And I think a lot of what I think, especially this conversation with Vibhuti, that you've been saying about, actually this culture of courage and bringing in that whole culture of being able to actually just be honest and say, look, I'm not okay today, or, for it to be okay. And I think the work lies there. I mean, of course, I did speak about the fact that it is building a work culture that is supportive and conducive, of course, is the overarching way to make it sustainable. But how do you build that work culture? And I think one of the things that it is because within that team, right, there's all, I mean, however large or small it is, there will always be those people for whom, work is work, personal is not professional, and it's a little, old school way of thinking, which is changing, but it's not changed 100%. I mean, I know people who are like very young in the workforce, and I actually have this kind of, I have to work 10 hours a day, I have to work 12 hours, work is most important, personal is not, or the other way around, or whatever. So I think the idea also for me, one of the key focuses also has to be on how do you sensitize each one of these people as to the importance of what mental health actually means, and how that linkage between mental health and productivity, mental health and a positive work environment, experience. And I think today, I think Mental Health to Work, you put out a post today on the different, I think,
Experiences, how?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I found, I mean, like, I think that's the kind of sensitizing that we need to do, sorry, of the team, of teams, because that's the culture we've been brought up in, especially in India. There is, I mean, in a lot of countries, I know, but I know it is that culture of, work is very important, but, when you are at work, you focus on work, so it's a very black and white kind of thing. And I think we need to break away from that mold. And I think what I hear Vibhuti and Tanu both saying is that's the mold. I mean, that's the shift that we're looking at. This whole psychological safety where you're able to building up, psychological safety that you're able to come to the organization and say, look, I'm taking off today because I just can't. I can't do it today. And I don't have to do anything. None of us hesitate, right, to come and say, look, I have diarrhea and I'm off. No one thinks twice. Even someone may snigger, but that's it. But it's such a like taboo to come and say, look, I'm depressed or I'm not. So I think sensitizing teams, I think that's very important, because I think only then can any initiative really take root. I think the other thing for me, and I think our focus is building very strong line manager relationships, because I feel like they are the key, they are the people you interact with the most along with your team. They are a very key link in being able to kind of, experience the organization or the cultures of the area. So I'm creating very open. I mean, that's I think the culture of courage. I really like that phrase. I don't know
Yeah.
as well. It's a very, it just like it just sounds nicer than psychological safety as well. Psychological safety is very heavy. It's like you really need to kind of. This one is,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's overused also. Come to think of it, psychology is so overused. You like you can put everything under the rug kind of feeling you get when you hear that.
Very true.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned, I think I want to maybe just stay with that thought is that this was the mindset change, right? That not everyone is at the same place where we are at right now. We are an organization, and within the organization, there's some people at a very different places right now. And that's a question I want to ask all of you. So that how do you get people, especially people in a position of leadership and position of, as people managers as well, who still are compartmentalizing work and personal life, work and mental well-being as well. How are you breaking those barriers?
It's interesting. I mean, sorry, I'm just
Go ahead, go ahead, Rina.
No, it's interesting because I think I've experienced that. I mean, I've tried in trying to break the barrier, especially I've had colleagues where for them it has been very much this what you're describing, right? Like very focused. And I can tell you, one is given that we are in the business of behavior change, and that is the focus work that we do. It takes time. I mean, it just does not happen overnight. It does not happen in a couple of weeks, couple of conversations. It takes a long time to kind of chip away at the kind of conditioning that they come with, the kind of, the mindset that they have, their priorities. I mean, there's a lot you're addressing, not addressing that person, but this whole baggage that they come with. So it takes a long time to kind of get there. And I don't know, like I don't even know if it succeeded 100%, but I sometimes even see the contrast. Like there was this one person who left our organization and then reached out to me and said, you know what, I miss you very much because our current workplace is very, very different, and I like, so I just, how we do it is something I think very specific to each person. I feel like it has to be tailored in this circumstance. I feel like it has to be tailored to the person, but I do think it takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. But having said that, I do believe that that within the culture around it, which supports and enables that kind of behavior in general, not aimed at that person, also helps because then what people who are not who don't think that way are kind of suddenly seeing little shifts. They're seeing suddenly a team member happier because they're able to go home quickly to see to their child and come back to work, for example, or that flexibility. So when they see like live examples, so kind of that I think really helps. Modeling of this kind of behavior around them also really helps.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to also invite Tanu into this conversation as well. That Tanu, given the aviation industry and its demands, and also all that the aviation industry had to also go through during the pandemic, right? And then to talk about when there is, I mean I don't know whether it happened in aviation or but I think just generally across industry we saw a lot of salary cuts, people being laid off. And there were a lot of those kind of demands that were very real and present that was happening, and then yet to still be able to focus on mental well-being. And but again, there could be people who may still be having these compartments, right? That need to focus on work, on money, on how to just get the business going as well. And we also have the mental well-being. What was it like at AirAsia to be breaking those barriers? What were those conversations like?
So I think, of course, airlines we were hit the most, but suddenly, very busy people and you're grounded, right? It was a time which we used very well. So it was a CEO used to quote Winston Churchill all the time: "Never let a good crisis go to waste." So we used that. We got in a lot of capability building. We built in a lot of engagement. We did all of that. We went all out for that as well. And a lot of focus was also done on middle management, right? The leadership at that level. Um, um, we wanted to uh, create a kind of a group which was able to really relate very well with the teams that they were leading, right? And so this was the time where we really utilized towards this, right? We had very focused approach towards the capability building, so that yeah, there is business, and yes, nothing goes away, we will come back. It's but the people are here to stay, and it's how we manage it during this time is how it comes back to us a little later. So a lot of focus was on them as well as in, what is it that they can do to keep their teams happy, keep their teams engaged, to build in this whole empathy and to be able to have these open, transparent communications back and forth with each other. So we really spent a lot of time on that, and that's still ongoing for us. So, I mean, yeah, it's not because I look after learning and development that I'm saying it. It's just that something that we just keep reiterating one way or the other. So a lot of effort is there in that. That is not just business; it's always business.
Yeah, yeah. And I love this quote, which the judge, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that can be so much more applicant for us
That
as
was a
well.
mantra big time.
Yeah.
2020.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that again goes back to the intent, right? The people first. And what is that you're really valuing, right? And just like I think how individuals were asking questions, what am I really valuing right now? And the existential question that you're talking about, it almost seemed like that was also the existential question for the organizations. What is it going to really value at this point in time? And let's use this time not for business, but to focus on people because that's what we value. And I know that completely resonates with us also because at our firm as well, I think we've grown the maximum. We've grown from 5 to 30 people, from having only posh at work to have now child safety at work, mental health at work, and inclusion at work. So, and I think just looking at how do we use the time to build resources, to expand on, and to focus on areas that's important for us also. That really brings back to the intent and the intent aspect and the values. And many times you're in crisis is what's really standing out. I'm going to just maybe now, I want to also actually bring in Rina because of one of the initiatives that they have taken last year about their mental health week off, which we never spoke of, Rina. And I was very curious to know that are you also following it for this year?
Yeah, so, so first of all, I'd like to give you all the credit for it because in speaking to Rosanna, the trip around the posh work, and she happened to mention it. I took the idea back this year and like serving the organization was started up immediately. So and it came at a really good time for all of us. But no, actually, I see that you guys have done it on a very yearly. We haven't actually talked about bringing it back again. Uh, but maybe there's something to look. Maybe a condensed version of it. Maybe because I don't know whether we can actually take a week off because our primary work is with governments and government partners. So at that point, even the government was all pretty much half shut down for education. But you know, it'll end up being a little unfair because a lot of the field team or team that works with the government, our implementation team will have to anyway answer calls and because it just keep to our relationships that we build with governments and different states and countries. So, but yeah, maybe a version of it. I think what we feel, is actually honestly we're not speaking about it.
Yeah.
In my head, what I'm saying right now is completely nuanced. That maybe it's a good idea to look at a version some.
No, I think it's also because it is challenging, right? And this is what you're talking about sustainability. That there's so many times you want to focus on aspects, but because of the context and the other stakeholders involved, it does get challenging. I want to also take this moment to recognize that as well. That the intent is there, and the focus is going to be there as well. But it is challenging for all the listeners here and different employers as well. That it's not a very smooth road ahead. That it requires a lot of work and rework and reviewing of how do we hold on to the sustainable measures as well. And it could take different shape and form. It may not look at the same thing. And that's okay as long as the focus is still on the mental well-being. Right? So just maybe the last question as a closing question, some nuggets of wisdom on how employers can embark on this journey of supporting their employees' mental well-being. What are something one could start with, say, because what I'm hearing from all three of you, Advanced Auto Parts, Stir Education, AirAsia, they have gone through their own journey over the last many years now, all right, also because they have been established systems in place. But how could employers who are wanting to bring this focus on mental well-being, but they've not been able to start yet, what can that look like for them, and what are some of the things to focus on in small ways?
I'm just going to repeat what I said. People first. They make your business, right? And if you don't realize that, if you don't recognize that, you lose them.
Right. And then if I can invite into maybe some practical things, or what are some of the things they can start with?
So for you,
Lost you again, Tanu. Tanu, lost you again. Tanu, can't hear you, sorry. Tanu, can you try saying something now?
yeah, can
Yeah.
you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry. I mean, this is really unusual at my place, but okay.
No problem at all.
So I think first is always a good check to see where they are, right, and where's the gap. I think, and that's when we can build in more practices. So maybe that pulse survey is very important to understand what is it that your people are telling you. Is there a gap in your communication? Is there a gap in your compassion? What are the competencies which are missing in your leadership, in your middle leadership? Do a quick evaluation of the gaps before you come back, and then you find out things which work for your organization, right? So because not every organization is the same, we work in a very different environment. For us, it's very fluid, it's very dynamic. Even if I have to, get in learning across, I cannot get people captive. How do I still manage it? How do I make learning on the go available for them? How do I make things available for them on their mobile so that they don't even have laptops, they don't have time, they are not sitting at their desktops. So how do I make things easily accessible to them? So each employer should always look at it from their context, see where they are, and then build up as to where they want to be. So first thing is, of course, your gap analysis, which needs to be done. You see where is the gap. That's when you can start putting in practices. So do a pulse survey for sure, and find out where is it that we are missing out, or where there's a lag, and then work and build in the process that you want to complete. So I'll give you an example of what we did for us. We have a team of internal trainers called certified AirAsia trainers. They're called CATs. Okay, and this is a practice which we picked up from Taj, right? Wherein they picked their internal teams to deliver trainings. Okay, now, but they were delivering functional trainings. For us, being an airline, our training is SOP driven, right? And it's very, very stringent. So I cannot get in just for anyone to deliver any kind of training. But what we really needed during the pandemic was a lot of engagement and a lot of focus on guest obsession, which is another of our values. Now, how do I create this regular engagement? So we took this Taj practice and we converted it into our way, right? So our cats, instead of training on functional trainings, they started training on behavioral trainings, because it's only somebody who is flying knows what is the true story, what does the customer want to be, what does the passenger want. So they know their story the best. They know the context best. So these cats.
Should I get some water?
I'm so sorry, but let me continue. Sorry. So these cats took the learning forward, and we trained them. These subject matter experts. We trained them into behavioral training, right? Which is, try to get engineers to deliver trainings on stress management, but they love it, and they said, we want more and more of this. So we created a very sustainable thing out there, because these people conduct the trainings for their peers. We roster it in a way so that maximum people can get it, and these are short learning bites, because we cannot afford to get people away for longer hours. So everything has to be in the context of your airline. Everything has to be seen in a space where we are right now. So not everything can be a face-to-face media. So of course, virtual is the next best thing which has happened, and we've learned. So use that as well. So do a skill gap analysis. Then you look at what is it that you can create. So you can create a continuous culture of learning, or a continuous culture of engagement with what you have available, right? So for the cats, it's also one day of, it's beyond what they are doing, right? So these are people who are not trained in this, but they have just taken a lead. So it's a kind of a leadership development for them to be taking others, and for most of them, it's like a dream come true. They never thought that they would be doing it, but they love it, and it's become like a branded thing for us. If we want to be a part of this program, and they bring in some very impactful, measurable change on, say, our customer service metrics. So I think other thing which always works for us is work backwards. So look at what you want to achieve, right? And then you move back from there to see how you want to build up that. So you see your skill gap, and you see what you want to achieve, and the rest of it in between, in the context of your industry, will fall into place. I hope that made sense.
You did very much. Thank you, Tanu.
I'll just piggyback on what Tanu said. Rina, I will be short, I promise. I talk a lot. Not paid for it, but yeah, just innately. So working backwards, the strategy that I think personally I learned early in my career, and I'm trying to drill that into my managers and leaders sometimes, because whether we like it or not, we're all very one-sided on many occasions, right? We have outcomes, we have projects, we have people problems, we have solutions that we need for those. I think working backwards is one thing that has helped people see a different perspective of how can I do it differently. Like if somebody was to come and complain, oh, I have problem of nutrition, my person is leaving. I'm like, have you had the conversation? You tell me the to be state, right? Take a step back. Have you had the conversation? Do you know what is the problem? And if the answer is a no, then you know what happened. Right? The 7 whys get implemented then and there, and the person will not ask me a question. But what I end up doing then is give them the solution. Part of the solution is telling the solution sometimes for me. We are a newer organization. In India, we are operating outside of the US for the first time. Many problems. So I tell them, have a conversation, identify the driver of the person. If you can solve for it, here are 10 things you can do to support. If you cannot, say you cannot. You cannot remain silent. I think sometimes when you don't have a solution to a problem, you don't talk about it. And that's another problem. For not owning up, I don't know it. Right? Raise your hand and say, I don't know. Let's try if this works for you. If not, we will try another solution. I think the experimenting, the trying method, the mindset is another thing that works for us in India. And we are seeing a lot of that happening in the US as well. Example, working remote was the first time we did in the US. We didn't think as a retailer we could ever work remote, but we worked remote 2.5 years, and now 30% is remote. So I think some of those status quo or those brave conversations that I don't know, let's try it might work, is another thing that has worked. And I do see people, trying that a lot, but not everybody stands up and says, oh, I tried this, it worked, but it didn't work. I mean, it's okay for us to even fail and say, I failed, but I'm going to try again. And I will see I don't make the same mistake. So I think these 2-3 things that we see working for us in India setup.
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what Tanu said. You know, if there is the intent, I'm assuming you're an organization that has the intent of kind of looking at mental health, then people first I think is the best model to have, because I think that things will flow from there. So I think one of the things is like again you said, and like we also do, is looking at getting feedback from teams, call survey, any other way you want to do it. But talk to them to find out what is it that they want actually, because or what is it that they need. Because I mean that's something that we can assume, and we can make a fairly educated guess over it. But I think it's always best, because then they also feel that they've been heard, they feel connected, and they feel like these initiatives are stemming from what they want and what they what's best for them. So I think first thing is to actually talk to the teams, and really figure out what is it that they want done. Because I mean, also the solution often will lie there, because something that you may think works when actually, like I said, like actually this whole mental health week off is an example, right? So when you as a people and culture internal facing role, it will take the external person or the person facing externally working with the chance stakeholders for them to tell you that look, it doesn't work for us, it works for you, but not for us. Even if it's like you can say it's lockdown and we can't go out, but we need to go out. We don't need to go out. So we really need to hear the voices of the people, and that's I think what would really kind of bring the solutions. I don't think there are any like a bunch of solutions to all of this, but I think what works best is to just start from there. Like again, like coming back to what you said, find the gap, work backwards to what is it that where do you want to get to, and then see what works for your context, for your the kind of work that you do, the people that you have, the number, the spread, there's so many factors. So I think that's something I can say that.
Yeah. I think usually summed as well, Rina, in your response. And I think I wanted to say, bring in the different pieces of conversation that we've had. But for people who are listening to us, who are really keen on, who have the right intent, they have the right value, but just don't know how to start. and where to start as well. And I think what I'm hearing from Vibhuti is that just focus on that one person. Just hear them out. Don't look at the screen, don't look at anything else, and that's all it takes as well to support that one person's mental well-being. Just be present completely, hearing them out so that they feel heard, they feel acknowledged, they feel seen, and then we look at what's it, identify the drivers of problem as she had put it as well. And sometimes you may not know the answer. Sometimes you may not have a solution as well. And you know what? Hey, we are in this together. Let's figure it out. Let's try it out. And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Something that has never happened before. It's okay to try it out. And I think that's one thing the pandemic has taught us. That the change is the only constant, right? That we have to be ever evolving. And research has shown this. That if you want to really thrive and not only sustain, we need to be constantly evolving and innovating. And that can only happen if we challenge the status quo. And that's only how we can also bring the conversation around mental well-being into our day-to-day conversations and normalize these conversations. And sometimes it could be by just being vulnerable ourselves. In what way I've been there too. And I know it's hard. I'm also at a loss sometimes as well to really then sow the seed for the culture of courage in those spaces. And you know what? And this is what we can do. But look at, still keeping the choice with them. Give them back that agency. Just because we are in a position of power and leadership does not mean that we need to be making decisions for them at that point in time. All we can do is that this is what we can do. Give them that choice. And what we can do is give you that supportive environment at that point in time. And hearing those voices, right? Not assuming, not falling prey to those assumptions, because I think that's when we slip up. So starting with that one person, one conversation, going on to the team, looking at how can we really support our managers and people manager leadership as well to be available for those conversations as they are also experiencing different areas of their life, right? Because as individuals, as partners, as parents, as employees, as managers as well, and how do we really support them to be available for other people? And then really bring the entire thing together and look at, what is the common goal that we work towards? This is the goal that we have right now. And then look at, okay, how do we work backwards by making assessment of where we are at right now, like I said, and doing the skill gap analysis. And now let's look at this is where we are at, right? This is where we want to be. What does that really look like? What is the thing that we would need? Would we need changing the policy, like Rina said, reviewing all the policies? What does my leave policy look like? Is it only do I need to say in the leave form that I need to take time off because of this physical illness? Or I can just take time off without having to explain myself as well. In some organizations, there's something called unsick day as a preventive measure that you take time off, not because you're experiencing burnout or because you're experiencing exhaustion, but you know that you're moving in that direction as well. I need to take that time off as a preventive stance as well. So looking at those policies as well. And seeing again, when you look at any kind of measures and initiatives, it can only be sustainable if it's aligned to the context. Does it work in your context? Because what's going to work in something you're working in governance, or in a GTC, or a manufacturing, or aviation, or hospitality, or IT, ITS, will look very different. There's no one straight line formula. But the only thing that we can hold on to is the intent. Is it people first or not? And I think on that note, I'm going to end this panel discussion. Thank you very, very much, Vibhuti, Rina, Tanu, for your time today. It's an enlightening discussion, and I'm sure all the listeners have some takeaways from today's conversation. And we really hope this is not the first and the last of its kind. We hope to continue these conversations to normalize this and to talk about mental health just as easily as we would talk about, like Rina said, I have diarrhea today. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and have a lovely evening ahead. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.